All right, Fifth and Long fans, welcome back to the show. Friends of the program, it is officially Fifth and Long Super Bowl Media Week. Officially. The Super Bowl is a little over a week away, exactly. I mean, Paul and I are recording this on Sunday, but it's right around 2 p.m. now. Kickoff of that game is going to be at 6:30. I don't have the Tom Brady countdown clock in my room, so I don't have the exact like days, hours, minutes, seconds to kick off. But maybe that's something I should get in my room for next season, so that once this Super Bowl is over with, I can switch it on and start the countdown to next year's Super Bowl week.
I think that would just be so psychologically deflating if you started that countdown. To just know how long you still have until next football season and the next Super Bowl. It feels so weird, dude. We're recording this on a Sunday. It's the first Sunday with no NFL football since Labor Day. It's ridiculous.
I saw some tweet actually scrolling on my phone yesterday that I don't remember who it was from, but it was like telling my wife that I'm not watching any football this weekend because the games aren't that exciting and I value family more than anything.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I've seen stuff like that too, like where people are like, oh, babe, I'm going to hang out with you and skip Tuesday night football for you.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Don't use that one, fellas. Don't use that one. Paul and I have some exciting stuff planned for you all this week. Our idea essentially is to do our own little version of Super Bowl Media Week where we can't make it to Vegas. If we did, we might not ever make it back. Full disclosure. But we can't be there to actually participate in Super Bowl Media Week, but we still want to have some pieces of content to share with y'all and do our own little way of leading up to the game, making it exciting for the listeners and viewers here. So our itinerary this week is essentially going to start with this segment here. We're going to talk a little bit about Super Bowls from Paul and I's lifetime, some of our favorite memories from those games, what the Super Bowl means to us. And I feel like this is as close to an official American holiday as it can get without actually being known as such. My place of work, we don't work. So the restaurant that I work at part-time, we shut down for the Super Bowl. We actually don't even open up. We close our doors. People we don't expect to really come see us anyways. We don't have any TVs in the restaurant, but yeah, man, I'm really excited for this year's game. This is a great time of year. It's a little weird still not having my Patriots even a part of the playoffs. I'm so used to us playing in this time of year. It's like it just feels like vacation time almost. But yeah, what do you really associate the most with the Super Bowl non-football wise? Like this could be anything, totally open-ended question. It could be a person, it could be a food, it could be a feeling, an emotion, and a memory, a memory.
Memory. I thought you said it right the first time, but then tripping over your words a little bit there. The two things that come to mind, I just think of kind of like chips and dip, to be honest with you, because I have like such a wide assortment of dip, French onion dip, buffalo chicken dip, anything like that, chips and salsa. So that's the first thing that popped into my head. And then if we're talking purely non-football stuff, obviously the commercials are pretty good. But even though the past few years they've been waning, I would say back in like 10, 15 years ago, back in my heyday, I sound like an old man, but they had some good ones, man. Doritos always had some fire commercials. The E-Trade Baby commercials are always my personal favorite. They brought those back last Super Bowl, so I was really pumped about that. But yeah, those are the two things that leap out to me, non-football related. How about yourself?
So it's two things for me. When the Patriots were playing in Super Bowls pretty frequently, something that my parents would do is so we moved to South Carolina when I was a kid. We're originally from the Massachusetts area. We had a favorite pizza place up there, Town Spa Pizza in Stoughton, Mass. Paul, I know you live in Massachusetts now. You've
Yeah, I'm
probably had
familiar where Stoughton is.
yeah, you've had some good pies up there, I believe. But travel to Stoughton if you ever get an off day. Visit Town Spa Pizza. Take home a large pie. You will not regret it. This is the best pizza I've ever had. We loved this pizza so much. We would ship frozen boxes of this pizza all the way to South Carolina, like basically every week during the playoff run. And come Super Bowl time, if the Pats made it, we would do a double order. We'd invite all of our friends over. So we would have like a dozen boxes of pizza for this Super Bowl party, and we'd heat up all the pies, we'd put our toppings on them, whatever. People would come over and just have a good time watching the game. So that's something I definitely think about. Town Spot Pizza. If anybody's listening, Fifth and Long would love a Town Spot Pizza sponsor.
I'll check it out. I'll check it out, man.
You should. It's really good. And the other thing I think of is just pick up football games, actually, because any year that the Pats were not playing in the Super Bowl when I was a kid, some friend of mine would have a Super Bowl party instead. And typically I'd be over at a friend's place. We'd throw on the floodlights in the front yard, mostly during the first half and halftime of the game, and just find a pigskin, let her rip. There'd be like 6 to 8 guys, sometimes a little bit more, and we'd have a full-on tackle game going. Sometimes people would get hurt, sometimes they wouldn't, but that was like our little version of the scene in The Sandlot where they're playing baseball underneath the July 4th fireworks. That's kind of what that felt like to me as a kid. And it's not exactly the same, but in a sense, there's some similarities, right? Like a pseudo American holiday with the Super Bowl. Some people really associate football heavily with America these days, and like they almost go hand in hand how baseball and America used to go. I don't know if baseball currently is America's pastime. I think football might have the keys to that conversation right now.
It over.
Yeah, exactly. So to me, those are the first things I really think of. Just spending time with family and friends as a kid, good food, competition, even if your team isn't competing in the game, and finding ways to be around other people who have an appreciation for sports and those other things I mentioned.
Yeah, exactly. Your memories were a lot more eloquent than mine. I just say commercials, chips, and dips. So I think you win the poetic. If we're doing this in terms of like sounding like a poet or sounding like nostalgic, which we are for Super Bowl nostalgia, I think you win the best memories portion of the segment, Patrick. But yeah, I love spending time with everybody watching football, and I think it should be a national holiday. I think they should do one of two things: either make the Monday after the Super Bowl a national holiday, or move it to Saturday. You know, it's like, because then you're drinking, you're partying, you're doing all this stuff, and then you got to go up and get up for work the next morning.
Not ideal. Not ideal for sure. So we've got a few different categories to talk about for this Super Bowl episode. Paul is a Steelers fan. I'm a Patriots fan. We both have a lot of experience with this game in the last 20 something years, which is pretty much the time frame that we're looking at. Paul and I both agreed it would be slightly difficult to talk about games we weren't alive for when they took place. Like maybe someday we'll do a deeper dive into Super Bowl history, talk about some more historic games. I would like to do that sometime, actually, but just for the sake of this episode and for most of the people who we feel actually tune into the show, most of us are going to be around the same age, and most of us will remember the same Super Bowls. So that being said, Paul, do you have, outside of a Super Bowl that your team played in, do you have a favorite Super Bowl game that you watched or that you remember?
I do, and you're not gonna like it. If we're excluding any Super Bowl that the Steelers have been a part of, the Super Bowl that I enjoyed watching the most, that I thought was the most exciting, was Super Bowl 42. You got the Giants knocking off the undefeated Patriots, which in and of itself was a massive storyline because nobody thought that the Pats could be beat that year. And the Giants were just like a 4 seed that kind of snuck into the playoffs. They were only 9-7 in the regular season. So it was the true David versus Goliath matchup. Then you have factor in things like the helmet catch, Eli Manning breaking out of like what was basically a sack to get loose and throw that ball to Tyree. Like I was thinking about it earlier today, recalling that play, that if it were in today's day and age where they try to do a little bit of a better job at protecting the quarterback, you could have made an argument that that play would have been blown dead, like forward progress would have been stopped. Because Manning was within the grasp. I forget the Patriots defender at the time, but just a phenomenal play. And the fact that it was just like a Joe Schmo, David Tyree, that made that catch, I thought added to it even more. So I'll go Super Bowl 42, 17-14 Giants. I know that probably tugs at the heartstrings for you, but I had to throw it out there.
Well, I'm wearing this red Tom Brady jersey, the authentic, like old school anniversary jersey for the Pats. And I was actually wearing this jersey during that game. Like there's a picture of me in front of the TV at my parents' house prior to kickoff, wearing the jersey and like pointing at the 12, and like I'm all excited. And the things I remember about that game was just how slow it felt. Like that Patriots team was such an offensive juggernaut that a lot of our games felt like track meets. So there was a few games that year that were over by halftime, some of them even earlier. I think
Oh,
even
definitely.
in that playoff run, we had a game against the
I think you beat the
Broncos.
Jags. I remember you beat I thought it was the Jags you beat by like 40 or something in the
It
divisional round.
it might have been the Jags. I know we had a year where we faced Tebow in the playoffs. This might have been the second
Yeah, that
year.
that would have been Tebow would have been later.
Yeah, I think that was the second year we faced the Giants in the Super Bowl, but we beat them by like 40 or 50 or something like that. Yeah, man, I remember the Tyree helmet catch for sure. It's hard to forget. I remember the Giants pass rush that game. Um, this was the first ever NFC wildcard team to win the Super Bowl. This 2007 New York Giants team, and they spoiled the Patriots' perfect season. They spoiled a shot at history. Um, it was the last game of Michael Strahan's career, and by performance in the regular season, if you look at it, this was actually the worst team in NFL history to make a Super Bowl at the time. At the time, just based off regular season performance. Like I said, 5 seed, first ever NFC wildcard team. They played, I think, all 3 of their games on the road to make it to the Super Bowl as well. It's crazy, man. I like. It's one of those games where you look back on it and it doesn't make sense how you managed to come up short, but I remember the last game of the regular season was a game against the Giants, and usually that time of year, if we had a playoff spot locked up, we were resting starters and just giving guys sort of like some time off. And to this day, I still sort of feel like we sacrificed a shot at the perfect season for the Super Bowl. Like if we had just rested players, if we hadn't given them as much tape, as much film on that game, if we had just like done whatever, maybe we still would have came out and won. I don't know. Maybe we wouldn't have had to face the Giants. And yeah, maybe a lot of things happen differently. I can certainly understand why that would be one of your favorite picks. I think it's a favorite of a lot of non-Patriots fans for sure.
And it was a great game too,
Yeah, it was
So
a
that,
great
that was
game.
the other thing too. I'll say this: I've said it many times on the podcast as well, that despite the fact that you guys did not win that Super Bowl, I still consider that 2007 Patriots team to be the best in NFL history. Talked about they just absolutely boat race teams and crushed the soul out of so many teams, not only in the regular season but in the playoffs. And I really don't think that there's another team, even the perfect 72 Dolphins, I think it was. They're or any team that we've seen since those 7 Pats. I still think that that's the best team to ever lace them up in the NFL. Didn't win the Super Bowl, but still think they're the best.
I don't even think that's the best Patriots team of all time. Like
Oh, come on, dude. You had Brady to Randy Moss that year. Brady threw what, like 50 touchdowns? I
they
don't see
didn't.
how you could say that.
You got to win. You got to win. You got to win the big game. My favorite Patriots team of all time was the Super Bowl 49 team that won it all against the Seahawks. I think if you look at the roster as a whole, that was probably the most impressive group we had on both sides. Darrelle Revis was on that defense. He was incredible that year. Huge part of the reason why we were able to win the Super Bowl. Obviously, you had guys like Gronk, Edelman, LeGarrette Blunt, like James White. The list goes on and on and on. If I had to pick my favorite Super Bowl game, not including my team, funnily enough, I'm actually also picking a game with my host's favorite team in it. I was gonna go with Steelers Cardinals. That
Yes, sir.
Super Bowl 43, where Big Ben got his second ring. There was the Santonio Holmes toe tap catch in the corner of the end zone. I think a lot of people forget that Larry Fitzgerald scored a touchdown about 2 minutes before that on like a 60 or 70-yard bomb where he just ran right through the Pittsburgh defense and gave the Cardinals a lead.
Mm-hmm.
Like James Harrison had that crazy interception return touchdown as well. That was actually one of the what ifs I wanted to talk about. Did you probably know more than most general sports fans? I assume you know this because of you being a Steelers fan. Harrison was supposed to blitz that play, and
Yep, I am
he
aware.
he just read it pre-snap and dropped back instead. The rest is history. Um, I don't know if you guys win that game if not for that play. I mean, theoretically, if let's say you hold Arizona to a field goal there, the game's tied 10-all going into half. Whereas if they score a touchdown, they're leading 14-10 going into the half instead of you guys being up 17-7 and eventually just winning by a few points.
Yeah, exactly. This is my favorite Super Bowl of all time, obviously biased, but yeah, that play is, I consider it the greatest play in Super Bowl and NFL history. Obviously, again, it's a subjective opinion of it. But you're right. He was supposed to blitz on the play. And to this day, I don't know the exact reason why he didn't, other than what you alluded to. Maybe he just read something in the Arizona formation. But you're right. We don't win the Super Bowl if he doesn't make that play because it's a 14-point swing at the end of the half right there. The Cardinals are about to score a touchdown, and Harrison picks it off and takes it 101 yards for a touchdown as time expires at the end of the half. So it's a 14-point swing. And I encourage anybody to go back and watch the play because there's so many things going on once he actually does intercept the ball. He kind of runs into his own blocker, Deshae Townsend, our cornerback. So it's like not even like he went off to the races, so to speak. And there was an early flag thrown on the play. It was on Arizona, but I thought in real time when the flag was thrown, like, oh man, there's a block in the back that's going to bring it back no matter what. And then the third factor that goes into that play is if you look at it, Larry Fitzgerald is illegally running out of bounds down the sidelines. He goes out of bounds under his own power, runs down the sideline out of bounds, and then comes back into play to make the tackle on Harrison. Harrison scores right at the goal line. So even if they had tackled him short, the Steelers still, in theory, should have gotten another play, an untied down after that, because that's illegal touching, or it's illegal to do that and go out, or it's technically called delay a game. I think if you see it on punts where like the gunner goes out of bounds on purpose, and it's a flag. But so many things went down into that play, but fortunately Harrison was able to score. And yeah, I consider it the greatest play in Super Bowl history. We don't win without it. The toe tap was insane as well. And what people forget is Ben Roethlisberger had a beautiful ball to Santonio Holmes a couple plays earlier in the end zone that Holmes dropped. And Ben had the confidence to go right back to him, find him in the corner of the end zone over like 3 defenders. That drive that ensued after the Fitzgerald catch and run to put the Cardinals up ahead in the game for the first time all night. That drive started back near our own 10-yard line because there was a holding call on the first play that backed us up 10 yards. So we were already faced with a 1st and 20 right off the bat, and they just couldn't cover Santonio Holmes on that last drive. It was Ben to Santonio the whole way through. I thought it was phenomenal. Ice in the veins from my Hall of Fame quarterback, franchise quarterback, and Santonio, man, Super Bowl MVP, certainly deserving. So I'm getting chills just speaking about it right now. It's great to relive it, but I'm happy that you chose that as your favorite one.
I can tell. Yeah, I mean that was the second Super Bowl in 4 years for the Steelers. A couple years ago, you had another opportunity against the Green Bay Packers. You could have gone 3 for 6, and I think that would have really cemented Roethlisberger and that Steelers generation as a dynasty. Because I think all things considered right now, even though you made it to that next Super Bowl, it's you got to have that third win to really be considered a dynasty. Still an amazing team, and the transition from Bill Cowers last year to Tomlin taking over and things sort of changing. I don't want to talk really about that Packers Steelers game, but the biggest thing I remember from that Super Bowl is Lil Wayne's remix to Black and Yellow, where he like.
I didn't watch anything at the half of that one. I'll be full disclosure. They
were
losing at the half and playing so bad.
It
I couldn't even. That wasn't the halftime performance.
No, it wasn't a halftime performance. It was just a song he put out like after the game, after they won. And
I got you.
I remember listening to. I think I listened to that song a lot because I was a big Lil Wayne fan at the time. I think that was like time with the timing of that. That was probably like when I was in like 7th, 8th grade, somewhere around there. So yeah, that would make sense. That was when I was listening to a lot of Carter 3 and so on and so on. Did you say you couldn't even watch at halftime, that you like walked out?
Of Super Bowl 45 we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Super Bowl 45 because they were losing at the half. I was so like, and they were playing so bad. They did score a touchdown if I remember correctly at the towards the end of the half. I think Ben found Hines Ward to bring it a little bit closer, but Green Bay dominated the first half, and I was just like, I couldn't I couldn't sit still. So I had this like mini basketball hoop in my basement that I just went down and I shot. I had this little marker in my basement where I lined up for what I called like a free throw on my mini hoop, and I shot free throws the whole halftime show. And then my dad called me up when we were about to kick off in the second half. I couldn't sit still. I had to be doing something to take my mind off of it. It's the second most devastating sporting event that I've ever had to endure, and Rashard Mendenhall fumble at the end was just brutal. But
damn, what's the first, out of curiosity?
2015 wild card game when Jake Arrieta shut out the Pirates. The game, like the Pirates weren't like close to winning that at any point, but I truly thought that Pirates team had what it takes or had what it took to win the World Series that year. They won 98 games, and that was like the third year of that mini run that the Pirates had back 13 through 15, and it's just like, and then it all kind of fell apart after that. So that was number one. Super Bowl 45 is number two. Now I went from chills and excitement to just depression, just like that.
Well, the most crushing defeat of my Patriots fandom was neither of the Super Bowls against the Giants. For me, it was the loss against the Eagles that actually hurt me way more.
That was another good one too.
Because the Eagles game, I mean, if you go back and you look at it, it was a good game, but I didn't have it amongst my favorites just because it was a little ridiculous. So many offensive records were set in this one. It was a 41-33 final score. Philly has that stupid Philly special play. Like, I don't even know. For all I know, Nick Foles could be living on a ranch in the middle of nowhere with no connection to society. And he may as well be, because he hasn't done anything since this Super Bowl. I still can't believe like Eli Manning's going to be a Hall of Famer, right? Nobody's going to give a fuck about Nick Foles in 25, 30, 40 years. Okay. And here he is having a better offensive performance against the Patriots in this game. And that was why they won. Because our defense just couldn't get any stops. After this game was over, my girlfriend at the time was over at our house watching the game, and I remember the game ended and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't talk to anybody. I just sat in silence watching the Eagles celebration, the awards presentation, all the post-game stuff. I sat there for like 2 hours just watching, like not talking to anybody. Meanwhile, like we had a Super Bowl party, so like everybody's leaving, all the guests and stuff are going home, like friends, people I know. I'm not saying goodbye to any of them, whatever. I'm just sitting there like depressed, watching the Eagles celebrate a Super Bowl that I thought we should have won. If we did, it would have been back-to-back Super Bowls, 2017, 2018. We won the Super Bowl in 2019, so theoretically it could have been 3 straight and 4 in 5 years, which has never been done before. That's the one that pains me the most. It's not the Giants Super Bowls, because I think those Giants teams deserved to win those games more. The Eagles deserve to win this game too. I felt like it was more of a missed opportunity.
It was like your own version of that Stephon Diggs watching the AFC Championship meme. That was what it was like.
Because like offensively, we did everything we could. Brady had an awesome
threw for
game.
over 500 yards in that one, I think, right?
Set a postseason record. I think either Amendola or I think it was Amendola also set a postseason record in that game as well for like most yards or something like that, most receptions in a game. I don't remember. Yeah, man, and it just came down to. I remember we sat Malcolm Butler in that game, and that was a big talking point. He didn't get a single snap on defense, and this was a guy that was our number one cornerback like all year. We just decided not to play him in the biggest game of the season for some reason. People were saying maybe it was because he was sick. Some people were saying maybe it was because he was out at a strip club the night before the game. Nobody really knew, and it's still something that's debated to this day.
Interesting. Didn't know all those tidbits, or at least I didn't remember him about Malcolm Butler. I was a little taken aback that the Super Bowl 42 wasn't the most devastating one, but the light that you shed on this loss to Philadelphia, and I didn't realize that that would have in theory been like 3 Super Bowls in a row if you would have been able to pull that one off. I can kind of see looking back in hindsight about how that one could be more devastating. And yeah, Nick Foles is back up. And by the way, I hate the term Philly special. If there are Eagles fans out there listening to this, I'm sorry. That is not your play. Every NFL team has a play like that. It's just a wide receiver reverse pass. It is a very commonplace play that I guarantee is in any playbook. You just do a wide receiver reverse pass. Philly didn't invent it. Okay, people have been running that play for years before that. So that's the last thing I want to say on that Super Bowl.
This game is also the sole reason why I actually hate Eagles fans more than any other fan base. Like, even more than Yankees fans.
So much for getting Jason Kelsey on the podcast, but that's okay. I'm not big fans of him either.
I didn't say that the Eagles themselves, just the fans. Just the fans. I hate Eagles fans.
Snowballed Santa Claus.
And they were eating horse crap in the streets after they won this game. Like, they're barely human. Never mind. I don't want to go off on a tangent. Obviously, you can tell I'm very sensitive about the subject. Besides, so we talked about the 2007 New York Giants, the 2011 New York Giants, since we're on the subject of devastating Patriots Super Bowl losses. That second Giants Super Bowl winning team, they were the first team in NFL history to win a Super Bowl with a negative point differential on the season. And they were just the third team in NFL history to reach the Super Bowl while winning fewer than 10 games since the 16-game season was put in place. Also, the last Giants team to win the NFC East 13 years ago. Now it was, just to remind you guys. And it was the last playoff appearance under Tom Coughlin. This was like the golden era for the Giants, almost of this generation of Giants fans, I would assume. And this was sort of like the bookend to that chapter, because everything that happened after that was, there was the Odell Beckham Jr. run when he came into the league and things were exciting for Giants fans, but it's like the stat says, they haven't won the NFC East since then. This one hurt as well for me, but also a great game. There was the Randy Moss Hail Mary attempt at the end of this game where the Pats could have had the ball within the 10 yard line or something like that with 10 seconds to play, but the ball bounced in and out of his hands. Another great Cinderella story I had was the 2005 Steelers, which is a team you could probably talk more about, Paul. Made the playoffs as a 6th seed after a 4-game win streak to end the year. At the time, they were just the second team ever to win 3 consecutive road games to advance to a Super Bowl, and the first since the 1970 merger to win a Super Bowl without playing a single home playoff game. Ben Roethlisberger officially on the map after this one. Bill Cowher gets a Super Bowl win. Do you remember a lot about this game? You were still pretty young, but I would assume you at least remember some things, right?
Oh, yeah, I remember everything, to be honest with you, about Super Bowl 40. The thing about that team, you called them a Cinderella, and I guess they were because they were a 6th seed, but that was a really, really good football team that I think is a lot better than your typical standard 6th seed. They were still 11-5. That shows you just how competitive the AFC was that year, that they were the 6th seed and 11-5. But for me, in the year of Super Bowl 40 was more about the road to get there. That was Jerome Bettis's last year. He was hanging him up, and Detroit, where the Super Bowl was played, was his hometown, and he had never won a Super Bowl before. And the whole time, the mantra was among the Pittsburgh Steelers players was the road to Detroit. Just get the bus back to Detroit. And while Ben Roethlisberger, and with all due respect, in the actual Super Bowl 40 played pretty horrendously, he did have a QB sneak rushing touchdown, but other than that, didn't do too much. The passing touchdown in that game was actually Antoine Randall to Hines Ward on a gadget play, which again was a wide receiver reverse pass. Okay, so we're running it a decade earlier than
the Pittsburgh special.
Yeah, no one called it the Pittsburgh special, but whatever. Okay, Philly fans. To me, it was about the road to get there, and Ben was phenomenal in the playoffs in that one. He went into Indianapolis and beat Peyton Manning in the divisional round when Indianapolis was the number 1 seed overall in the playoffs that year and was phenomenal. Everybody thought we were just going to come out and run the football because we had one of the best rushing attacks in the league that year. Willie Parker was a phenomenal running back, and he actually had a 75-yard touchdown in Super Bowl 40. But we came out slinging it, and Ben was throwing it all around the yard, and we got up on Indianapolis and were able to hold on. Obviously, I could go into that game that in and of itself maybe another time because this is Super Bowl nostalgia. And then Ben was dominant in Mile High the following week in Denver, and it was all about the road to get to Super Bowl 40, just get the bus back to Detroit. And that's what I remember about that Super Bowl run more than anything.
At the time, we had some great family friends that were Steeler fans, and we were over at their house for the game, the Super Bowl party. I remember really well at halftime of that game, sitting down at my buddy's PlayStation 2 for to play some NHL like 2004 or 2005, I guess it must have been, and getting absolutely curb stomped. I think this kid put up like 20 goals on me in 20 minutes. I'm not even kidding.
Jeez.
It's a long time ago. It was my first ever time playing a hockey video game too.
I hope you've gotten better since then.
Sort of, not really. Yeah, I feel like to really talk about the Super Bowls of this era, the conversation kind of goes through Brady, Manning, Roethlisberger. Like, those were the guys for the most part we saw competing in these games in our lifetime. And now Mahomes kind of gets the baton passed to him as well. He's been a regular in these games. It's funny, the only game, there's only been a handful of games since 2001, Brady's first Super Bowl, in which it wasn't some iteration of Brady, Roethlisberger, Manning, Flacco, Mahomes. Rams, Bengals, 2022 Super Bowl a couple of years ago. Also a pretty good game, and that's kind of like the outlier right now amongst those, at least just in recent history. Last year's Super Bowl, I actually thought was a great Super Bowl. Mahomes getting that comeback win, in a sense, like cementing his legacy as a multi-Super Bowl winner. This year, he's got an opportunity to win another one as well. Like we talked about earlier, we're doing our picks and preview for this game later on in the week. But last year's Super Bowl, did that like do anything for you? Does that crack your list of one of your favorites? Yeah.
Yeah, it was really good. You can call it what you want at the end of the game, the holding call, non-holding call, whatever. But I thought it was just great display of offense. I mean, you had two quarterbacks that were playing at the highest level that they possibly could. Mahomes had 3 touchdowns through the air in that one. Hurts had multiple rushing touchdowns. I forget what his passing stat line looked like. And it was one of those situations where you just felt like whoever was going to get the ball last was going to win. And obviously I do think it was a holding call, but I understand the whole, like, can you really make that call that late in the game? You know, it'll be debated for a while with the holding call on Juju Smith-Schuster, but that was the deal after that. Phenomenal. I think one of the most important plays that'll be forgotten, Jerick McKinnon sliding down right before the goal line so that the Chiefs could keep the clock running and just settle for the field goal to leave Philadelphia as little time as possible. It will be a forgotten play in history 5-10 years from now, but it's not one that I forget. A very smart play, heads up play, and a very unselfish play as well. So yeah, that one certainly cracks the list. I do have 2 other Super Bowls that I really wanted to talk about. Unless you had another point on the Chiefs Eagles one, there were 2 others that I wanted to bring up. Do you have any other point on the Chiefs Eagles?
No, I don't have any other points on Chiefs Eagles, but I also have a few other games or moments from games at least that I want to mention before we fully dive into our favorites, if you will. My favorite Super Bowl moment of all time, I think, even like, okay, so I can't say of all time because there's so many great Pats moments, and despite me trying to be unbiased, those do hold a lot of merit to me in my sports fandom and appreciation for these games. So going with the non-favorite Patriots Super Bowl memory, Devin Hester's opening kickoff return touchdown.
Oh, you stole one of mine.
That is, well, I'll never forget it because, like, Hester was such a unique player. especially now in hindsight, like looking back at what his talents were and how he was a game breaker pretty much strictly as a return man. Like, as well in this game, like, given the magnitude of it being a Super Bowl, if he gets the ball on a return opportunity just once and has even a slightly good return, he's not touching the ball probably for the rest of the game. So to open the Super Bowl up with a kick return touchdown, can you imagine the betting odds on this nowadays if Hester was playing now and was like
Yeah.
the vaulted returner that he is and everything? Like, first touchdown bet, Devin Hester return touchdown plus another prop for Devin Hester to return the opening kickoff. That could net you a profit of several thousands of dollars. And hell, maybe somebody actually pulled that off back then. I don't know, but yeah, I'll never forget that. And listening to Hester break it down after the game as well, kind of sharing similar sentiments to what I just had, where he was like, I knew that, I needed to make the most of whatever opportunity that I got, because if I got a good opportunity and I did something good, odds are I wasn't going to get many chances after that. Chicago still lost that game. And for me, that kind of makes it like even more important in a way, if you think about it, like the fact that he did it in a losing effort.
Yeah, because I still think it gets talked about. Everybody I talk to has that as one of their. I mean, like I said, you took the words out of my mouth. That was one of the things I was going to bring up, where everybody still talks about that in such like awe and lore, even though they lost it. It is unbelievable. Everybody remembers that kickoff return touchdown. Anybody who watches football.
Well, it's just like the moment, like the kickoff of the Super Bowl. It's
you what get action right away.
Yeah, it's what you think of as a kid. All the flash bulbs popping around the stadium, right? The flyover of the Jets 5-10 minutes before the national anthem, players crying on the sidelines, the emotions of the moment and everything, and the anticipation. And then you start off the game with a return touchdown from the most dynamic return man in history. This is like a signature moment for the special teams side of the football. Basically, it's like the greatest special teams moment maybe in history, arguably. Yeah, I mean, yes, there have been game-winning field goals kicked, but this, I'm pretty sure this is the only kickoff return touchdown in a Super Bowl. It's definitely the only kickoff return touchdown to open a Super Bowl that I know of.
Yeah. I think that there might have been some other kickoff return touchdown, but I can't think of any off the top of my head. And yeah, none to open up. So that's right. A good one. Speaking in the same breath of return touchdowns and against the Indianapolis Colts, I got to bring up the Saints Colts Super Bowl, Super Bowl 44, if I remember correctly.
Also had this on my list.
Tracy Porter intercepting that and taking it back to the house to seal the deal for New Orleans. I remember that pretty vividly. Just felt so good for the city of New Orleans to get that Super Bowl win. Such a diehard, devout franchise that had really had no success up until that point, up until Drew Brees came and turned things around there. I mean, they were the laughing stock of football back when Archie Manning was the quarterback there, and the bags over the fans' heads. They had been through all of it, and the culmination of it, and the energy of Tracy Porter taking it back to the house and sealing the deal for the Saints there. As a neutral fan watching that game, I don't think I've ever been more happy for an NFL team than I was for the Saints that day. So that though the game, I guess, maybe wouldn't dictate, like the final score is 31-17, if I remember correct. So like the score in and of itself wouldn't dictate that it was like a great game. But let's keep in mind, I mean, the Colts are driving down to potentially tie the football game on that drive, and Porter taking it back to the house to seal it. It could have been a way different story. Could have been, 24-24. Maybe we head to overtime or something like that if that play doesn't happen. So Tracy Porter and the New Orleans Saints, that's another favorite memory of mine.
I'm surprised when you first started talking about that game. I thought you were going to go with the onside kick to open up the second half.
The onside kick, that was in my notes. I forgot to mention it, but yeah, onside kick coming out of the half, that's ballsy, dude.
I think that's the way more notable moment. I mean, the Saints were trailing when they did that. Like, think about it this way. If Indianapolis gets that, they've got a 10-6 lead and the ball at your own, like, 30-something yard line to start the second half. Like, you may as well put the game to bed right?
And how do we talk about Sean Payton if that doesn't work out?
Yeah,
Do we
exactly.
consider Sean Payton the type of coach that he is today? Because if not only that, not only can you make the argument that the Saints might have lost the game, but all the criticism would have come back on Peyton. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? It's one thing
completely.
to just lose the Super Bowl. It's another thing like he probably would have been the scapegoat.
100%. I totally agree with you. That was a game, that decision just alone was something where like you have to really, really, really feel good about it because it's like you said. I mean, if it doesn't work out, not only are you changing perhaps the outcome of the game, you're changing the perception of you as a head coach, which with, I mean, let's be real. If Peyton doesn't have that Super Bowl win to his credit, it's he's not talked about the same way
You mean
nowadays.
Breeze? You mean
Breeze.
Breeze?
Well,
Breeze.
no, Sean
Oh,
Payton.
Sean Payton. I'm sorry because he's facing Peyton Manning.
I
You
got you. No, you're
understand. You
good. You're
understand the
good.
confusion. Yeah. You're
I was
right.
going with
Sean
Sean
Payton.
Payton.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
Drew Brees probably still puts up all the stats and this and that, but Sean Payton, I mean, it's a lot. That changes a lot of things, at least in terms of his career arc. Um, yeah, that was crazy, and that was a time in my life where when Peyton was still playing, and Manning's been retired for a handful of years now, so it's hard to really like still. It's hard to put myself back into that mindset where every year it was like either the Patriots are facing the Colts at some point or we're hoping for the Colts to have the most devastating end of their season as possible. And that game was like one of my favorites as a Patriots fan without any rooting interest, just because of the way in which Manning and the Colts crashed and burned with that interception and everything at the end. It was so awesome. So awesome.
I didn't have quite the disdain for Peyton Manning that you did, but it was good. It was more so good to see just because of how happy I was for New Orleans as well, as I
What
mentioned.
what is your biggest Super Bowl what if? Like if something happens differently, if this team wins, if so on and so on and so on. Do you have one that immediately comes to mind? It could be something that we've already gone over if you want to rehash it. I don't know if there was something else because I've got a couple here that I haven't quite mentioned yet.
Yeah, for sure. So obviously, I'll just gloss over it briefly. I mean, as a Steeler fan, I always think, what if Rashard Mendenhall didn't fumble and the Steelers end up scoring and winning in Super Bowl 45? And Ben's got 3 Super Bowls. The Steelers are maybe referred to as a dynasty, like you said, for winning the 3 Super Bowls in 5 years. And also on the converse, like, what if Aaron Rodgers loses that Super Bowl and he then probably is regarded as the greatest quarterback to never win a Super Bowl because that's the only one he's played in. But I don't want to. We talked a lot about Steelers and Patriots, so I don't want to like talk too much about that. Although the next game I'm going to bring up is a Patriots game. I do wonder how we'd look at Matt Ryan had the Falcons been able to hold on and win that game.
Yeah.
Are we talking about him as maybe potential for the Hall of Fame? Like he does have an MVP under his belt.
No.
Dude, I think an MVP with a Super Bowl win as well. Like I think that there might be a case, but I'm not saying that I would quite put him there. But Matt Ryan had a pretty good career in Atlanta. I think it was as simple as just run the football. Once they had with like after Julio Jones made that incredible catch, and there's like 4 minutes to go, and they're up 8 points. Run the fucking football, dude. Instead of they like passing it, and then they get the sack, the holding call. They put themselves out of field goal range. You just run the football like three times. Make the Pats use their timeouts. You kick a field goal. You go up 11 points. You win the game. So that was a huge what if for me. Maybe take a Super Bowl away from Brady. He's only got 6, and so those are the 2 things that stand out. I can't believe we've gone this long without talking about the 28-3 game, but it's on my mind.
Well, I wanted to save that. Obviously, I've got the hat here.
Mm-hmm.
28-3. Thank you, Drew Carroll, for the birthday gift a few years ago. Yeah, man. The Matt Ryan Hall of Fame nugget. That's an interesting note because you're right. He did.
I'm
win
not
the
saying
MVP
that I think that
year.
he should be in the Hall of Fame per se, but
it would be a conversation.
Yeah,
it would
we
be
might
a
have
conversation.
about it.
Like odds are he would be a fringe candidate, and people would probably put that up for debate in certain circles. You mentioned the Super Bowl. I think it was 45 was it? The
Steelers
Packers
Packers
Steelers?
was
Yeah.
45.
When
Yeah.
when you left the room at halftime to try and collect
Hmm.
yourself. The so similar story for me in the 28-3 game, right? Um we are down 21-3 at half. And I remember the first thing I see when the first half ends is Lady Gaga's face on the screen at the roof of the Super Bowl. She's about to like cable jump basically onto into her show. And I saw her face like pop up on my screen. It's a close up and she's singing at the camera. I just turn the TV on mute. I walk outside, I slam the door behind me, and I go for a 20-minute walk in our neighborhood, like cursing to myself, saying, like, I can't believe we're going to lose this game like this. We're going to get blown out. Everybody's going to be talking all offseason about how Brady's too old and this and that. And like, this is the end of the Pats dynasty. Like, they're going to blow it up. And then little by little, they just started coming back and chipping away. This was after the whole deflate gate thing happened in the offseason prior. So Brady actually had to sit out the first 4 games of this season, and the Pats went 3-1 with Jimmy Garoppolo and Jacoby Brissett, and that was like a big thing as well. This game was and is still my favorite Super Bowl game, and it was hard to pick between this one and the win against the Seahawks in the Super Bowl with the Malcolm Butler interception. Both of them were super dramatic wins. Both of them were huge in terms of what they do for Brady's legacy and how he's viewed. If he doesn't have that second prime, that second dynasty, people don't, even though he would still have a ton of playoff accolades and stats, people wouldn't look at him the same way. But this 28-3 game to me, this was like, people talk about Brady the way that they do and believe in his like magic, if you will. I think more because of this game than anything else. Like coming down from 28-3 with less than 20 minutes on the clock, right? You had to complete 2-point conversions down the stretch to make it happen. You get the ball back in overtime. As soon as we did the coin toss, as soon as we won the coin toss in OT,
Yeah, I knew it was over too.
I was like, this game's over. We're winning. There's no way Tom is going to let us not score a touchdown here. It's got to happen. It has to. And for it to end and with the ball in James White's hands at the end, James White, such an underrated running back in NFL history. I mean, like guys across the league who played at that time will tell you he had some days where he was like Marshall Faulk out there, being able to contribute both in the passing game and the run game. He didn't have a really long NFL career, and the Patriots had so many running backs that they utilized that he was never like the full-on feature back. He never really had like a full season display like that, but he was great for PPR and fantasy. 28-3 game, that's my favorite for sure. I just remember like the range of emotions and then how my family celebrated after the win. I think like that was, I mean, it's the greatest Super Bowl comeback of all time. It's one of the 4 greatest playoff comebacks in NFL history. Tom Brady's in the game, total legacy game for him. 51st Super Bowl. It's right around that like even number. And it was the second Super Bowl in 3 years for the Pats. So that had a little extra oomph to it as well. Yeah, that's my favorite game for sure. And it's, like I said, it was close between that and the Malcolm Butler game, but that's got to be the one that I go with. I still can't believe the Falcons gave it away. I mean, with the play calling down the stretch, and then they actually like, I mean, what, there was like 3 minutes and change left, and they had that crazy Julio Jones toe tap catch on the sideline, and then there was
that's what I was talking about. And then they didn't just run the football from there, and they tried to get cute and they passed it and weren't even able to get a field goal. Didn't take time off the clock.
They had a play action pass, which resulted in a sack. And then they had another pass play, which there was like a holding call. And then there was another sack after that. They ended up having to punt. We get the ball back, go down the field, score, tie it with a 2-point conversion. The Falcons never touched the ball again after that. So it's, I mean, that like totally flipped the game on its head completely.
Yeah, it's up there as well. So I think about that as a what if, or at least how we talk about Matt Ryan without that. I can't let you get away with the fact that you just compared James White to Marshall Faulk, by the way. Marshall Faulk is the 12th all-time leading rusher with over 12,000 rushing yards. So Sorry
I
for
meant not in terms of like overall career stats, just in terms of like his skill set, being able to be just as effective in the passing game as he was in the running game. He was a real dual threat, and he didn't have a longer career, but he's one of the most respected Patriots players of the last 20 years for sure.
maybe so, but he is no Marshall Falk.
No,
Sorry,
he's
I'm not letting you get away with that one.
listen, this was not my own opinion. This was something I've heard guys like I was actually watching an interview today where LaShawn McCoy talked about playing with Brady and winning that Super Bowl in Tampa Bay over Kansas City. And they talked a little bit about James White in that one. And he was the one who made the comparison of James White to Marshall Falk, not me. So go look at that interview and get angry at him, not your boy here.
All right, then.
Another big what if for me is this is the part where I turn into a Pats homer. It actually is Pete Carroll deciding to throw the football.
I think you turned into a Pats homer when you said, "All right, welcome back, 5th and Long fans."
When I woke up this morning.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, but I like Pete Carroll throwing the football on the goal line when you've got not Marshall, Marshawn Lynch in your backfield. That to me is the biggest what if. Like, I know Hightower stuffed him on the play before, but if he breaks through the O-line, just picks up like 3 yards, it's back-to-back Super Bowls for the Seahawks.
Yeah, and how do we look at Russ as well? That's
yeah,
a good point there too. Yeah,
that would have been the first back-to-back Super Bowl win since the Patriots in 2003, 2004.
And the year before too, like was 43-8. And my personal opinion is that the Legion, not like Russ was bad by any stretch of the imagination. I think he was still awarded Super Bowl MVP in that beatdown of Denver, but
he was
like the Legion of Boom. I think some people could make the argument the Legion of Boom kind of helped carry him, at least in the earlier years. And I think Russ honestly deserves a lot more blame than he gets for that play. Everybody kind of blames Pete Carroll for the bad play call, and yeah, he deserves.
But he's the one that made the throw. Blame.
Russ, what's he thinking? He's supposed to be an experienced quarterback at that point. He's throwing over the middle at the goal line. Come on, what are you doing? Roll out a little bit or something. Be smarter with your decision there. I mean, you have to read the defense as well. We're going to talk about him as an elite quarterback. Something he's got to take into consideration.
You have to think about it like game situation though. That's like time's running down, right? You only got a couple timeouts left. The situation is you're probably not going to have some big, long, drawn out play like. It's probably quick snap throw, shot at the end zone, maybe another one after that. Then you run the football if it's 4 down territory. But at the same time, like he missed the throw, sort of like it's not like it was totally outside of the reach. It's just Malcolm Butler jumped the route, man, and like that was a play that the Patriots practiced against in practice that week. It was something they had on tape, and it was something that they had coaching points on specifically for Butler, and they never got it right once that week of practice, but somehow Butler was able to just time it right in this one, trusted his instincts, went and got the ball. That to me that's the greatest defensive play in Super Bowl history to me. I understand James Harrison with the pick 6, but it didn't like seal a Super Bowl win. This did. This kept the other team out of the end zone. It was Brady's first Super Bowl win for that second dynasty. Like I'll never forget the reactions on the sideline of the team. Everybody just freaking out. It went from total doom and gloom. Our season is over. We're losing another Super Bowl, 3 straight Super Bowl losses, including the 2 Giants games, to now, oh my God, did he just pick that? Are we going to win? What? We're going to win? It was insane, man. That was like, the 28-3 game was really hard to pick against as my favorite. And this game was a big reason why, because I think that the drama in this one was just as great. Brady was down 14 in the second half. He led that awesome comeback. There was the Edelman little like shake route to the outside that turned into the game winning touchdown eventually. Yeah, man, I am so damn lucky to be a fan of the team I am, for sure.
Definitely. Well, it certainly has turned into a Pat Steeler homer session, but what can we say? Those teams have been in the Super Bowl a lot over the past few years.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's not like every single week we're spending all this time talking about every single one of these games, even though some people would say I do. Um,
Yes.
but it's look, it's hard not to consider it, considering what we're going over 24 years of Super Bowl history. Essentially, Brady's been to 10 of those 23 Super Bowls that we're talking about. So it's hard to just gloss over like half of the Super Bowls that we're using as reference, right?
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. I was making it more of a joke, but
But it's true though. It's true. Um, some other what ifs just involving the Patriots. What if Belichick plays for overtime in 2001 instead of trying to go for that game winning drive where Adam Vinatieri kicks the field goal? Like John Madden was saying, I don't agree with this decision here. I would play for overtime. If he does, if the Rams win that Super Bowl, does Brady even continue to start for the Pats? Do they run it back with Tom the next year? Does Brady win another Super Bowl? Does Belichick, is he looked at the same? Um, are the Rams looked at as a dynasty? Because remember, they had that Super Bowl win a few years before, the first Super Bowl of the 2000s against Tennessee, where even that was a great game, coming down to the game-saving tackle at the 1 yard line. Um, yeah, man, it's crazy how many, like, if you think about it, how many Super Bowls Tom Brady's been in. It's absurd. Um, what are your 5 favorite Super Bowl games of all time if you had to pick?
okay. Doing some thinking and I'm going to start with number 5 being Super Bowl 44, Saints over Colts. Tracy Porter with the interception, return for the touchdown to seal that one, the onside kick. I think we've already given that Super Bowl some love. And again, as much as it was for just the game itself, I thought New Orleans finally getting a Super Bowl ring and that franchise experiencing success was really good to see as a neutral observer in that one. So I got Saints Colts as number 5. Number 4, I'm surprised we haven't talked about this one yet, but I see it's on your notes. It's on mine as well. The blackout game between the Niners and the Ravens. That was a phenomenal game because Baltimore looked like they were just cruising, destroying San Francisco early on. Anquan Bolden was a beast that whole playoffs, and was again in the Super Bowl. I think he had like 100 yards and a touchdown. And then the lights go off, and then as like the national viewership is just waiting now. What's going to happen? It's another big break in the Super Bowl. It's like what's going on, and then San Francisco just kicks it into gear after that. That was the first time I ever remember. Also, like the whole, oh, is the NFL rigged? Did they do this now to make the game more competitive? Blah blah blah. And that whole scheme popped up in that one, but. I remember in that one I thought that there should have been a pass interference call in San Francisco's 2-point conversion attempt that would have tied the game at that point at 31. But instead, San Francisco is still down 31-29. And then I think Tucker hit a field goal after that to kind of ice it. But phenomenal game there. So I got that at what am I at? 4.
That was also that blackout. There was also there were some theories that there was like a bomb or something that was prevented from being detonated inside the stadium as well, and that had to do with the blackout. That it was something
Oh, I
like,
don't remember hearing about that.
yeah, some people have like what's the word? Assumed isn't the right word I'm looking for.
Oh, they think that it's somewhat covered up the
Yeah,
reality of the situation. Yeah.
yeah, that's been something I've heard before. I don't really believe either. I think it's just like bad
I'm
electrics.
not saying I don't believe it per se. I had never heard that at the time. So interesting. Maybe do some research then. Go through see where my scrolling takes me on that.
That
But
game's in
yeah,
my top 5 as well, though. I've got it as my 4th, just like you. Really unique game, great comeback. For some reason, I misremembered it, and I thought that the Niners were leading before the blackout, and the Ravens came back and won.
Ravens were up big. Yeah.
Right, but in reality, the Ravens were up big. The Niners came back, and then the Ravens went on to like retake the lead and win.
Yep. Yeah, so that was a phenomenal game, the back and forth of it as well. And like I said, the extenuating circumstances around Around the lights. Number three, I will put your 28-3 game reluctantly in there. I mean, just looking at it objectively, how the game went, the fact that it was the biggest comeback in Super Bowl history, and the game goes to overtime. It was a phenomenal game in and of itself, and I can't believe we haven't brought up the Edelman catch as well.
Oh
I
my
mean,
God.
you know,
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
the fact that he's able to get his hands underneath that ball and secure it and prevent it from hitting the ground is
What?
phenomenal too. And it's because like there had been so many great catches that have gone against Tom Brady, you know, in
Yeah.
Super Bowls, the Tyree catch, the Mario Manningham along the sideline in the second Super Bowl that the Giants beat you. And then also in that same game, you have Julio Jones's toe tap. And it's like, you know, crazy, but it was interesting that a phenomenal catch actually worked in the Patriots' favor for once.
Yeah. I remember when that happened live, my instinct was, I think he caught that ball. Like I'm pretty sure
Oh,
he
I
he
didn't.
grabbed it.
Live time. Yeah, live time. I was like, all right, that's definitely incomplete. And then you watch a couple angles, you're like, oh, crap.
No, I thought he had it. And then they actually showed the replay. And I was like, I didn't realize he was that close. I didn't realize it was literally like an inch off the ground. I thought he secured it basically like as he was coming down, which he sort of did. But even then, he bobbled it a little bit while he was uh, securing it like just less than an inch or two over the grass. Um, it's one of the best catches I've ever seen, just in like the magnitude. Super Bowl. It wasn't a Super Bowl winning catch like the Santonio Holmes one, so I can understand why that would take the cake for some. But in terms of like degree of difficulty, like I I don't know. I haven't seen many catches like that. That was pretty crazy. And it's Jules is my guy. That's I love Tom. Brady is a sports icon, and he's like almost like a he's almost like a superhero figure to me. But Edelman, I think, is probably my favorite Patriot if I had to pick one.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting opinion there. On the topic of great catches, so my number two Super Bowl of all time, I think I've already alluded to it, is Super Bowl 42, Giants over Patriots, the David Tyree helmet catch, throw to Plaxico Burress, the fade in the end zone to seal or to win it for New York, and just the fact that everything surrounding that game, the David versus Goliath of it all, and preventing New England from having the perfect season. I got that at number two. And then, of course, number one, you guys all know it, Super Bowl 43. So many things went into it. You have Hall of Fame quarterback Ben Roethlisberger versus Hall of Fame quarterback Kurt Warner. Phenomenal game. Larry Fitzgerald was out of his mind that whole playoffs, you know, running past our defense and Troy Polamalu chasing after him. You know, I was in fifth grade at the time. I started crying, thinking that we were going to lose. And then Ben gets it together, leads basically a 90-yard drive, finds Santonio Holmes in the corner of the end zone for the toe tap. James Harrison interception, return touchdown at the end of the half. I mean, what's there not to love? You know, so any season, any Super Bowl where the Steelers win, it's going to have a special place in my heart. That's my favorite of all time. Patrick, give me your top five list.
Okay, so I wanted to switch it up because I didn't want to just do a top five of Pat's Super Bowls, which if I was just doing this like as it's intended to be, that's probably what it would be. I would just pick my five favorite Pat's Super Bowl wins, and I still could if you want. I could rank those if you really choose.
Now let's throw some other teams into the
Yeah,
mix.
we've talked enough about them, and I'm still going to highlight a couple Patriots games in this one. So, number five, I actually have that Chiefs Eagles Super Bowl from last year. I thought it was a great game. I really enjoyed it start to finish. High scoring game as well. There was a lot of offense. Two of the best teams in the league that year. It wasn't like some big Cinderella story team. It was just like two of the better teams in football squaring off who deserves it more. And Mahomes took home the ring and well deserved at that. The Har Bowl, the blackout game, I had as my number four game as well, just like you did. Similar reasons as well. I just think in terms of other Super Bowls that we've had, really ever, that was a super unique one with the blackout, with everything else. I believe it was the last game of Ray Lewis and Ed Reed's career as well for both of them.
That's right. Yep.
So like an end to the careers of two undisputed Hall of Famers, two of the best defensive players of all time. Ray Lewis played pretty much that whole game without a tricep and it was still like making tackles and making big plays. You had Colin Kaepernick in a Super Bowl, who now is a extremely polarizing NFL figure. It's crazy to think that that's a guy who can't even get sniffed out for a job in the NFL, hasn't been able to, and yet he led a team to a Super Bowl appearance. Well, I'm not making this a Kaepernick segment. I get why he's not playing anymore. The implications of that game, though, I thought were pretty astounding, and the two fan bases, like, those were two of the better teams in the league. You had the Joe Flacco story going on, and everything surrounding that. Then you had the Harbaugh brothers facing off against each other. It was just a really unique game, and it almost had like a college football national championship sort of feel to it, in a sense where like it just didn't feel like a lot of how these other Super Bowls have felt. I have Super Bowl 43 as my third favorite, that Steelers Cardinals game. And just again, going back to the drama of this game, you've got a couple quarterbacks who have both already won Super Bowls. They're both going for their second. The San Antonio Holmes catch, the James Harrison pick six, even the Larry Fitzgerald's performance in this game. Like, so many awesome players. And the view of this game now, I think in retrospect, a lot of people consider this to be one of, if not the greatest Super Bowls in history. I don't think it's just you and I think it's a lot of other people share that same sentiment for it. And I think it's well-deserved. My other two favorites, though, are both Patriots games, and it's Super Bowl 49. The Patriots win against the Seahawks is my second favorite. And then the 28-3 comeback game, Super Bowl 51 victory, the Patriots over the Atlanta Falcons. Those are my top two favorites. The last things I will share regarding those games, Malcolm Butler's pick, that like, in terms of zero to hero, just nobody really expected that guy to be making any plays on the ball in that game, maybe even ever. And he kind of stepped up for us like halfway through that season, got more playing time, got more respect from the coaches, got more opportunities. And Bill Belichick famously deciding not to call a timeout at the goal line, leading to Pete Carroll overthinking a little bit, letting Russell Wilson throw the ball. Butler is just in the right place at the right time. Brady famously gifts him his Super Bowl MVP truck after the game as well. A lot of drama in that one, and it's still a game that brings me smiles. Sometimes when I'm really bored, I'll just throw on the highlights of that game or the full version of it on a YouTube or something, and let it play in the background while I'm getting work done or something. And then we already talked a lot about the 28-3 game. I don't want to fully rehash that because we spent some good time on it already. But yeah, that was just incredible. And it would be hard, I think, for any Super Bowl to top the roller coaster that game was, and all the different highs and lows of it, from the Brady pick six to eventually coming all the way back and winning it from being down 28-3, going into overtime. I think it's still like the only Super Bowl game in history that's gone to overtime as well. Yeah, man, that one takes the cake for me. That one takes the cake for me for sure. I still have some memories of the earlier Pat Super Bowl wins, Super Bowl 36, Super Bowl 38, those Adam Vinatieri field goals to win the game. I was really tempted to put one or both of those in there as my fifth favorite instead of the Mahomes comeback win. I think I went with Mahomes win just because I remember it a little bit better. I was pretty young for that first one. The Panthers Super Bowl I actually remember pretty well. But last year's game I enjoyed a lot. I thought it was a great display of talent from both teams. And I hope this year's Super Bowl lives up to those expectations as well.
Yep. I think we covered all these Super Bowls pretty comprehensively. I think we've touched on, at least in the past 20 years or so, a good deal of them. If there's a Super Bowl team out there that we haven't talked about, I guess I'm just saying this in terms of because we haven't talked about Wade's Denver Broncos, but they just haven't been involved in like a good Super Bowl. That was just a crappy game against Carolina. But we haven't talked about a Super Bowl that your team's involved in. Sincerely apologize it, but I guess leave it in the comments, right, Patrick?
Yeah, absolutely. If y'all want us to cover individual games that we haven't mentioned, if you want us to touch on some other great games in NFL history, we can certainly do that. It doesn't necessarily have to be a Super Bowl. I think that might actually be a fun kind of off-season segment to do where we break down some of either the best games of this past season or some of the best games in NFL history and sort of try to put people in the shoes of those teams in that game, the magnitude of them, go through the result and everything like that. I think that could be a little fun exercise for our listeners if you all want us to dive into any games that we failed to mention in this one.
That's good to me. But yeah, those are our best Super Bowls. I think we covered them pretty comprehensively. I'm good with my list. I imagine that you're good with yours. I am kind of jealous that you could do a whole top 5 list with just your team, but
yeah,
I think I speak for the rest of the listeners that we're thankful that you did not.
I mean, ranking the Pats Super Bowl wins.
No. I didn't ask.
6 would be Pats Eagles.
Oh God, I'm sorry, listeners.
5 would be Pats Rams, the second one. 4 would be Pats Panthers. 3 would be Pats Rams, the first one. 2 Malcolm Butler. 1 28-3. There we go. Easy.
I would say thank you, but again, I did not ask, so I'll just leave it at that.
I found a way to get it in one way or another. All right, Fifth and Long fans. This is just the first episode of our Super Bowl Media Week content. We got a lot of awesome stuff coming for you later in the week as well. Stay tuned for another episode coming out tomorrow. I'm excited, man. We're getting ever so closer to the big game, the highlight of the football calendar of the year. Paul, my friend, enjoy the rest of your evening. And to our listeners, thanks for tuning in. Catch us on the show socials on Twitter at Fifth and Long or Instagram and YouTube at Fifth and Long Pod. Paul, Kamish, it's a pleasure, my friend. Until next time.
Likewise, Patrick. God bless.